Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum. Welcome once again to Journalistic Writing. To tell you once again, my name is Imran Ch and I'll take you through this journalistic writing course. In our last lecture, we talked about the importance of writing and what writing is, what writing needs, and what writing requires from you. And after this, we talked about the difference between speaking and writing. And there, we studied that speaking is universal, whereas writing is not. We also saw that speaking or spoken language has lots of variations, whereas writing demands standard forms of grammar, syntax, and vocabulary. And then we saw that speaking or spoken language is mostly informal, repetitive, whereas writing or written language is always formal and very compact. Then we talked about, smaller features. For example, in speaking, we, let's say we give pauses and we give intonations. In writing, we give punctuations. And in spoken language, we pronounce, and in, written, we, spell. So this is how, we see these things. Today, I would like to, show you some more examples just to see that, how spoken language and written language are different from each other. Let's take a look of our first example. You can see there are two sentences. The first one, if I read it for you, his father runs 10 miles every day and is very healthy. Now, you can see very clearly that in this sentence, there are two clauses. Clause 1, his father runs 10 miles every day. And of course, it's a simple clause. And second clause, his father is very healthy. Now, you can see that these two clauses are connected with the help of simple conjunction and. And we read the other day that in speaking, lots of simple sentences we use and we connect them with and but. Now, if you take a look at the second sentence, you can see his father, who runs 10 miles every day, is very healthy. Now, if you see this sentence, then there are again two clauses, but there's a little difference. Our major, or you can say independent clause, his father is very healthy, and then it's combined with one dependent clause who runs 10 miles every day. And we have put the dependent clause in between our independent clause because who runs 10 miles every day is the quality of that father, or you can say his activity of that father. So the sentence goes, his father who runs 10 miles every day is very healthy. Now you can see the first sentence is, of course, speaking. The second sentence is writing. Let's take another look. It's slightly longer, and I can read it for you. All the guests at San Pietro seem to be on honeymoons, whether 1st, 2nd, or 25th. The crowd, primarily Italian, British, German, and American, was sophisticated and decidedly unsnobbish. There were even a few celebrities on view. A famous producer, his wife, and friends stopped by for dinner while the chartered yacht lay anchored in the harbor. Two well-known actors arrived the day we left. Another star was there, but for some reasons stayed in her room most of the time. Nobody asked for autographs, probably too busy having their own good time. Now, in this piece of writing, you can see that no repetition, words, you don't see any informal item, more compact, sentences are tightly connected with each other. And if you compare this piece of writing with your next one, then you can see a huge difference. Over here, you would feel that there are lots of sentences which are simple, loosely connected, right? This piece is repetitive also, slightly informal, and very easily you can find out those features which make any piece spoken one. I read it for you. Hey Jane, Bob and I just got back from a fabulous honeymoon at a place in Italy. It is loaded with atmosphere, and everyone else seemed to be on a honeymoon also. I guessed some could have been on the 25th, people from all over Italy, England, Germany, even some of us from America. And no one was at all snobby. There were some famous people there too. A producer had his huge yacht, and he and his friends ate dinner at the hotel. And then there were movie stars, but you know, no one asked for autographs. I guess we were all too busy doing our own things. Now, dear students, you see that there are very clear-cut differences between speaking and writing. And that's why I was saying the other day, I mean, if you are good at spoken language, for example, or you're good at speaking, but that does not give you any guarantee that you will be equally good in written expression or writing. You got to learn that. And the difference has to be very much clear. The difference between speaking and writing. Let me give you one more example. I'm sure you'd like that. Now, on your screen, you can see there are two pieces, and they are clearly marked as A and B. Let's first take a look of A. For the standard of building envisaged, maximum of a 10% variation would, in our opinion, give a price level at which these standards could be attained within the contract period stated. Just one sentence. Words are very formal, no repetition, very compact. Now compare it with another piece and you would see that yes, there is the difference like between written and spoken. Let me read it for you. We think that the standard of building we have in mind, see the difference? Over there we have envisaged, and here we have in mind a 10% variation would give the sort of price, and over there we had price level, which would make these standards possible inside the contract period we have decided on. In the previous, under A, you can see contract period stated, and in the second one you can see decided on. So again, one more difference perhaps I should like to tell, that in A, which I call written piece, starting is impersonal, whereas in the second one, the starting is we think that. So this is more, what you say, personal, starting from we, pronoun. So this is another difference, that writing is at times impersonal, whereas speaking is most of the time very, very personal. Let me give you one more example. Let's see example number 1. You must keep it and show it if you are asked to. Now, in this sentence, see again two simple sentences, connected with and, okay? And if you compare with the second item, which is to be retained and produced on request. Look, keep it, we are replacing with retain. Show it, we are replacing with produce. And then, what more we are doing is, we are putting two verbs together to make, the verbs parallel in the sentence. And if you're asked to is, on request. So the sentence goes at to be retained and produced on request. And this makes your sentence more compact, and there you are with the writing. The first one was speaking. See the second sentence, please. The information may be changed without warning. Second sentence. this information subject to be altered without prior notice. See the choice of words, see the formality of the sentences, see the compactness. The information may be into subject to be, changed is into altered, without warning, prior notice. See the difference? See the word choice? See the structure choice? Let's come down to the third example. Number 3. If there is anything wrong with the machine, go back to the shop where you got it. Now, compare it with contact the supplier should you find any defect in the machine. Now, look at this. I mean, the first sentence, if is should. Compare if and should. And that makes second sentence more formal, rather very polite as well. And anything wrong is, look, defect. Go back is contact. So this is how the word choice, very, very careful, very, very formal word choice. The last sentence, you must pay a deposit when you book and you won't get it back. And now, the second I give you is a non-refundable deposit. Now take a look at this. Non-refundable deposit. I mean, if you compare it with the previous one, you won't get it back. And here, non-refundable deposit. And let me read it for you once again. A non-refundable deposit is to be paid at the time of reservation. And over there, booking, and here, reservation. So this is how, dear students, writing and speaking both are different. And you really need to put in a lot of efforts, actually, traveling from speaking to writing. Speaking comes the natural way, and writing, I would say, does not come that natural way, though, of course, through some practice, through some training, through some hard work, of course, you can attain it. But be very careful that whenever you write, make sure that your writing contains all the features which make that piece a written piece. Know any item from the spoken one. Word choice is different, structure choice is different. No room for repetition, no room for informality, no room for colloquial, items, and no room for slang use and all. Here I can recall an interesting incident, which once happened, and this is a very apt example for this speaking and writing thing. At times, speaking, since like we don't, speak it that planned, okay, and that compact and that formal. So at times, like, speaking, results into, embarrassment as well. I remember once I was, going to my office, and on my way, I met with 3 penguins. They were just wildly moving, on the high-speed, road. I just passed by them, and then I realized, no, I should rather, take them somewhere to the zoo. So what I did, I came back and loaded them into my car, and instead of going to my office, I wheeled towards the zoo. Unfortunately, on my way to zoo, my car turned flat, and I was quite helpless as there was some problem, with my spare tire as well. But perhaps my stars were, really with me that day. I was lucky enough that when I, saw my friend also coming down the same way, I requested him that why don't you take these penguins to the zoo, and I gave him some 1,000 rupees. I had some sort of sense of like, satisfaction that perhaps today I did something really good. So let's come back and enjoy it over a cup of coffee. So I came back to the town and I bought a cup of coffee and a few cookies and started enjoying. And thereabout I spent about an hour or so. And all of a sudden, like, my eyes turned wide when I saw my friend along with those 3 penguins coming down the cafe. I rushed out and I asked him, excuse me, I gave you, 1,000 rupees to take these penguins to the zoo. And you are back in here again with him? He was slightly puzzled. He said, excuse me, I took these penguins to the zoo. They enjoyed there a lot. And I still have a few, money saved. And I now going to take them to the cinema. So this is how, we both, me and my friend, ended up with embarrassment, and we really enjoyed that. And I always enjoy it, whenever I recall. Anyway, this is all about our first topic, this importance of good writing and all. And with this now we switch over to our today's actual topic, lecture number 2, which is qualities of good writers and concerns. Robert Stevenson once said that writers are like jugglers. Writers are like jugglers. Why? Because they keep several balls in the air all at once. Let's try to find out what are those several balls. The first ball is writer as a communicator. To understand this point, we need to first understand what is communicator or what is communication. My dear students, communication is actually the art of being understood. To put it another way, communication is the ability of one person to share his meanings or her meanings to another person. To give you a little more refined version of communication, then communication is a process by which meanings are exchanged or shared through the common set of symbols. When I'm saying communication a process, so let's see different components of this process. In communication process, the first agent is, we call it sender. Why we call sender? He is the one who has some ideas, who has some feelings, who has some thoughts, or who has something to share. And he wants to send. We call him sender. The quality or the qualification of a sender is that he has something to share. Okay? And then we have receiver on the other end, receiving end. What's receiver's job? His job is to receive whatever is sent by the sender. And his job is to try. This is not solely his job to understand. Try to understand. If meanings will be, meanings in sender's mind, meanings in receiver's mind are equal, message is understood. Please keep in mind, sending and receiving is not always equal. Words do not have meanings. Sentences do not have meanings. Language written on a piece of paper has no meanings. Then where are the meanings? Meanings are in your mind. If you talk about shared experiences, amount of shared experiences, if sender and receiver both are communicating with each other and they are exchanging shared experiences, amount is towards higher, then of course the meanings will be very, very similar, understanding will be higher. If experiences, senders and receivers' experiences which are being shared, they are not similar, they are not towards the higher, rather towards the lower side, they are not similar, what's going to happen? Meanings taken out from will be dissimilar and understanding will be zero. So that is the relationship between sender and receiver, which are two very important components of, communication process. Now, inside these two, we have some more components, very important. Of course, your message itself. All right? Another one is channel. There's another one, medium. I mean, channel, oral, written. Medium, let's say, it could be a telephone. It could be, let's say, an email thing. It could be a letter. It could be a newspaper. It could be, let's say it, a mobile phone. Or it could be anything. So that's medium. And then there is one more element which we call the element of feedback. Receiver's reaction. At times, receiver's reaction is cold. At times, it's warm. At times, it's neutral. Why these three? Just because of, the sharing of the meanings. If meanings are being shared, he'll be warm. If meanings are sort of shared, 50-50, of course, he'll be neutral. If meanings are not that way shared, of course, his feedback will be very cold, giving no idea to the sender to understand, actually, whether he was successful in his communication or not. After this, there is one more commonly ignored component, overlooked perhaps, if not ignored. That's the element of context. So this makes, there is one more, I shouldn't forget that. That is the communication breakdowns, the barriers. Some visible, some invisible barriers. They're also very much there. So this is what actually the whole, process is. Exactly the same way, writer and readers, they are also having sort of the same process, sort of the same link, sort of the same connection with each other. Look, writer, as a matter of fact, is sitting in an environment. Now, that environment can be very regional or can be very global. That environment is generating. First take it this way, that environment is rather affecting the writer positively, negatively. Through this effect, actually, I should say, that different stimuli are, generated in writer's mind. Now, these stimuli actually, activate or create a reason to communicate. So this is how writer gets ready to send something. The way, we saw in the process of communication, that sender has something to send exactly the same way writers in some environment, regional or global, okay? And environment affects them, and because of that effect, stimuli are generated, and that stimuli actually create a reason, fair reason for the writer to talk. Now, what writer does then? Writer, analyzes these stimuli, and after that analysis, what he does, he develops a message to be sent. Once the message is finalized, it's designed, writer also becomes a sender. Now he's ready to send something, okay? And then, there are lots of other, procedures to follow. That language, that message actually has to be dressed up in some language. He is going to encode that message. Now, encoding, there is another discussion, another debate actually, like encoding has to be, how? It has to be from the writer's point of view, or it has to be from the reader's point of view. That is another discussion, which I'll, of course, discuss a bit later. And then, that writing is wrapped up in some medium and then sent to the receiver. If you remember, in my last lecture, I said one difference between speaking and writing is that the listener is right there in front of you. You can shake hand with him. You can say hello and hi. You can see his reactions there and then. He can, interrupt you. He can ask you questions. I mean, he can frown at. I mean, you can very much, on the spot, keep on fine-tuning your message. Writer does not enjoy this facility. Writer's reader is I don't know where, frankly speaking. Writer's reader is not there in front of him. So what do you think? Now, you tell me. Of course, speaker has to also very carefully design his message. So what do you think? How much care a writer requires to design his messages when he does not know where is his reader? And then again here, who is a reader? That's another discussion. Of course, I'll discuss it with you step by step, so that I may not mix up too many things. So this is how a writer as a communicator acts in the society. He may be a professional journalist or he may be a novice writer, but both act the same way. Yes, time and space factor, does matter, but both enjoy as writers exactly the way principles, which are applicable. I mean, principles of communication which are applicable onto the speakers, exactly the same way. All principles of communication, they directly, indirectly apply on writer. Why? Because he also is a communicator. All right. Now, let's move towards our second point, writer and his personality. This is a quite interesting one, and I would like to illustrate this point with the help of an incident which Dr. William, in his book On Writing Well, quoted. Once Dr. William and Dr. Brooke both were invited by some student newspaper editors and reporters. Dr. William was invited to, speak about writing as a vocation, and Dr. Brooke was invited to talk about writing as an avocation. Let me please tell you here that writing as a vocation means, writing as a profession, and writing as an avocation means, writing as a hobby. I mean, professional, and then, you can say part-time, this activity. I mean, they were, of course, sitting in front of lots of, student newspaper, editors and journalists, and they were asking lots of questions, and of course, very, happily, these two eminent and prolific writers were answering the questions. I would like to quote a few questions which will, explain us that what actually I mean writer and his personality. The first question went to Dr. Brooke, and the question was, Doctor, how is it like to be a writer? And he answered, well, it was a tremendous fun. I would come back from my hospital and would go straight to my yellow pad and would write my tensions away. The words would flow, and it was easy. On the other hand, Dr. Williams said, well, writing to me wasn't easy, nor it was a fun, and words never flowed. Next, Dr. Brooke, the question went to, if it was important to rewrite, and Dr. Brooke said, absolutely not. Why? Because this is how, writing should very naturally and in very original form should go to the readers. Let it all hang together. And Dr. Williams said, excuse me, to me, essence, I believe, rewriting is the essence of writing, and all professional writers rewrite, and then they rewrite what they have rewritten. Then Dr. Williams said, E.B. White was actually known to rewrite his writings 8 to 9 times. The third question was, what do you do when things don't go straight? Dr. Brooks said, well, stop doing your work, put it aside, till the day it would go better. And Dr. William answered that writing is not an art, it's a craft. And if anybody, any craftsman, runs away from his craft, he's going to be broke pretty soon. And then they asked Dr. Brooke again that, if you feel depressed, or slow or down, what you do? Answer was, go fishing, take a walk, or go on hill station. And Dr. Williams' answer was that if you are writing if writing is your job, then you have to learn to do it the way you do your other jobs. And they asked Dr. Brooke a question that, do you move in writers' circles? He said, oh, yeah, I enjoy it a lot, I sit with other writers, I share my, my piece of work with them. And this is how, I enjoy doing it. And Dr. William said, well, writers never, meet with other writers. They, work in this solitary drudges. And last question was that, Dr. Brooke, do you use symbolism? Answer was, oh, I love doing it. And Dr. Williams said, well, I run miles away from it. I try to be more and more concrete and more compact. Now, from this question-answer session, there were lots of many other questions, actually. But from this question-answer session, you can see that, fine, there are lots of principles, there are lots of rules and regulations for writers, but writing is not there unless it comes, out from that writer's personality, which at times acts as a wall. Writers are also human beings. They do have likes and dislikes. They do have choices, they do have attitudes, they do have moods, At times they don't feel like working, at times, yes, they are into very much it. And, of course, their writing is affected. So the first and foremost thing, after, taking care of writer as communicators, that writers do have their personalities and writing has to come through the same wall. Let's take a look now. There are a lot more other factors, which affect your writing. First of all, writer and the factors which can affect you or your writing include, number one, your age. It matters a lot because as you grow up in the scale of time and receptivity, your interests, your pastime, your likes and dislikes, your priorities, they do change. Your styles change. Second point, your experiences, they can be regional, they can be global, but they do affect a lot your writing. Your gender, another very important point, another very important factor which really affects man, woman, really affect your location. Your whereabouts, where you're living. You are in some countryside, some village, or you are in some, privileged area. It does affect. Your political beliefs matters a lot, affects your writing, your beliefs, your education, your parents and your peers, your friends, your religion. So all these factors which we saw, affect you, your writing, even I would say your productivity. So this is how we saw that writer, first of all, is a communicator. And that communication is not without his very own personality. Has to be very much there. Now, the third point, which is important here, if writers have personalities, exactly the same way, readers also have their personalities. Let me give you a hypothetical situation. Let's see, there are, two of us, you and I. We are sitting together across this very table. I'm on this side, you are sitting on the other side of this table. See, persons we are two, but personalities are 6. How? Look here. I, the way I think. Number 1. I, the impression I'm giving you to think. 2. And number 3, I, the real. Exactly the same way, you sitting across the table. You, the way you think. Number 2, you, the impression you are giving me to think about you. And 3, you, the real. Now see, we are 2 persons. We are having 6 possible, reasonably possible personalities. And that makes writer's job difficult, to beat so many. Who to address? Should we address the one, the real you are, or the one you want to be, or the one through activities you exhibit what you are? Now, my dear students, it's writer's job to find out that very real you, I mean to say that very real reader. Communication. I'm using this word again and again because as we've just seen, that writer, of course, fundamentally, first of all, is a communicator. So communication will be effective if it is between the 2 reals, me and that very you. So this is how it will be, effective. And it's not easy at times to find out or to discover that very you. That's possible after some careful study, which of course I'll discuss with you, and some points which, you need to keep in mind as a writer. Then, of course, you can discover the very real. The way, writers have, the way there were factors, which were affecting, writers' style, exactly the same way there are factors, which writers have to keep in mind about their readers. Who they are writing for, exactly the same way, their age, their likes and dislikes, well, their education, their beliefs, their religion, their whereabouts, their friends, the circle, their style, lifestyle, the community they come from. So, they are also affected by. So, readers do have personalities, and writers, one very difficult task is to find out the real he. He here means the reader who will be reading that piece of writing. Now let's move on to our next point. Very important point, which writers have to keep in mind, and good writers, of course, do. I believe. Good writers are context sensitive. What does it mean? Look, We all have contexts. Remember, I used the word environment. Writer is in an environment. Basically, that environment is the context. But this is half, actually, half truth. Reader has also got his environment. And this activity happens when writer and reader, their environments, come on each other, and there, like, the whole stuff starts. So, good writers have to be very, very, very careful about the contexts in which they're going to work. We all have contexts. They are good, they are bad, they are happy, they are sad. And exactly the same way, they make us good, they make us bad, they make us happy, they make us sad. So this is how, like, things happen. And you, as writer, got to be very, very careful about. Now, look here. Fundamentally speaking, there are two types of contexts. And let's call them a context, non-sensitive, A, and B, a context, sensitive. What do I mean when I say context non-sensitive? Context non-sensitive means that, such an environment or such a situation in which does not make us sad. Excuse me, don't forget, I'm talking about non-sensitive. Non-sensitive context, a context which does not make us sad or dismay us or disgruntle us. Now, take it this way. Non-sensitive context is a context when communication or writings or speaking, whatever, like, communication is done through this context. Readers, they will be intellectually engaged or stimulated. They will not be sad. They will not be dismayed. They will not be disgruntled. Same way, they will not be happy. They will not be overjoyed or ecstatic. Because it's very neutral thing. You are not addressing their emotions. You're only addressing their mind tools. You have some problem. You're writing that out to your reader. And you're giving him sort of a food of thought. Think over. So you engage what? You intellectually engage your readers. This is one context. And writers in such context do not beat about the bush, actually. When they organize their information, they don't beat about the bush. Why? Because, of course, it's not a work of emotions, It's all intellect. Therefore, what? In the very opening paragraph or in the very opening, they disclose what they want to say. And then onwards, it's all details, sportive details, or, all, A to Z information, which is needed, of course, they mention. But important thing is, in non-sensitive context, which engage readers intellectually, the organization of information is direct. Right there in the first paragraph, say what you want to say. Okay? Now, let's take a look at the second context, which we call as sensitive context. To be very straightforward, sensitive context is which involves or engages readers emotionally, or You can say readers are emotionally engaged. I mean, that can be something, the message can be sad, or it can be some sort of persuasive message, which is negative persuasion. Well, for this sort of context, writers do a little more care. They don't organize their information the way, non-sensitive. In the case of non-sensitive, here writers adopt indirect, organization, indirect approach. They do not say right in the first paragraph what they want to say. Rather, they wait. They wait, they set the scene, okay? They prepare their reader for something which is not intellectual, rather emotional, okay? So they start with some cushions. They start with some indirect, details, and slowly they bring, their readers towards that emotional stuff, and this is how, they organize their messages. So writer has to be very, very, very careful about the contexts. Are they non-sensitive? If non-sensitive, then direct. If they are sensitive, then, they are going to be indirect. Okay, to give you some examples of sensitive situations or sensitive contexts, take it this way. You are writing on religious issues or matters. You are engaging yourself on such religious matters which are like the discussion of which is not considered that way, healthy, in other words, which are taboo, for example. You are, writing on gender issues. You are discussing color, let's say, creed, let's say. You are, writing on minorities, for example, and so on and so forth. So these are some examples of sensitive contexts, and we are supposed to be very, very careful about. And a good writer, of course, he is very, very I mean to say tactful when he's talking about sensitive situations. Now let's see our next point. Our next point after context sensitivity is that good writers have the purposes very clear. They are not confused about. Because if they are confused, the reader's going to be. So they're very, very clear about the purposes. Let's take a look what purposes, are possible for a writer. You can see on the slide, the first purpose you can see yourself, to inform. Your purpose is, or your reason for writing is, to inform. Second, to persuade. You want to change someone's viewpoint. Third one, to educate. Fourth one, to call to action. You want people to do something, or you want to invite their attention to something very serious or something neutral going on. Next one, to entertain. And the last one, to shock. Now, these are some of the purposes which writers, can write on. And, of course, each and every purpose requires unique, of its own sorts, treatment, which professional writers know very well. So, this is how today, we talked about a few, qualities of good writers and some concerns as well. To give you a recapitulation, we talked about, first of all, that writers are, first of all, communicators. They follow all those principles of communication which any communicator follows. The process of communication, like from senders and receivers, like, work. Writer exactly the same way, writer and readers, And then we, studied that writers and their personalities. We, saw that writers are not away or out from. Their personalities are very much part and parcel of the game of, this writing. And through that, interview, interview which Dr. William in his book on Writing Well, he quoted, I try to explain, how writers, products are affected by their personality. And then we found out, a few more, points which affect, writers and their writing. The third point was, the study of context, its two different types, sensitive and non-sensitives, and how these contexts, affect the readers. In different contexts, how readers react, the risk factors. Sensitive contexts, of course, have high risk factors involved, and non-sensitives have, of course, low risk factors. So how then writer, tactfully, deals with these situations? Well, my dear students, in our next lecture, we'll discuss a few more, points about writers' qualities and the concerns. With this, take care of yourself and see you next time. Bye-bye.